What's up, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Postgame Podcast. I'm your host, Cory Smith of Pack Power 247, here with Charlie Gribble. Charlie, another frustrating loss for NC State. This one at least came down to the final possessions. NC State, this didn't feel like a game that you lost at the end so much as Stanford went on and won it. But NC State did have their opportunities down the stretch. You think back to the Whittier Copeland foul at the very, near the end there where he fouls out after turning it over late. You're not able to hit a three in transition. Trey Holloman misses with a couple seconds left. It could have given you the opportunity to either turn it over and get another bucket or something along those lines. And NC State not able to do any of those things down the stretch in an 85-84 loss to Stanford. Simply put, NC State now losing 4 straight games overall, 6 out of the last 7 games to close the season. You go from a team that was 18-6 to now a team that enters the ACC Tournament at 19-12 with a 10-8 record in ACC play. Just your thoughts on this one, and before we really jump into things, man.
Yeah, man, it felt like the same story, different game. It's what, towards the latter stretch. You got to give it to Stanford a little bit too. I mean, Cory just pretty much just manhandled us. Kind of took over for Stanford, finished with 33 points, 5 rebounds. And it felt like whenever Stanford really needed a bucket, they were going to him. And, pretty much all the time he delivered. It was a game of runs. It felt like, Stanford would go on a 7-0 run. Then State would answer with a 9-0 run, kind of back and forth action. But just down the stretch, didn't really hit shots. And you don't have a guy that can get you a bucket when you really need it. And it's another second half, at least on the defensive side, second half just collapse, I think. On the defensive end, you score 50 points in the second half, and it's still not enough to win you a game. It's pretty bad. Stanford ended up shooting on the game 48%, but that's after starting, I think it was like 5 for 21, 6 for 21. So, obviously a slow start for them, but they were able to kind of turn things around. But now you're locked into the 7th seed for the ACC tournament. You'll either see the Stanford team again on next Wednesday, or you'll see Boston College. No offense to Boston College, but I think you're going to get a rematch here next week.
Well, I don't know. Boston College wins late in the season and ends up kind of pushing themselves in, and I believe they've won at home against not Stanford, but Syracuse earlier in the season. So they've at least beaten some semblance of decent teams, but we'll see. We'll see what that ultimately looks like. And obviously for NC State, you'd prefer to play probably Stanford in that first game, just because of the fact that gives you another somewhat signature win, even if it's, in the ACC tournament. It is a neutral court site, so it could potentially qualify as a quad 1 if you're able to win that game to help them. And, we'll talk about all the quad 1s, quad 2s, where NC State stands coming out of this game. Will Wade touch on it a little bit, saying, he still feels like his team is in at this point, but, losing this game or losing a game in the ACC tournament would have made things a little bit dicey. Now, if you lose both, that could force a pretty difficult situation for NC State, despite what you've built in terms of your quad 1 and quad 2 resume. Before we get things started, I want to remind our listeners, as always, visit our iTunes, Google Play Store, Spotify, YouTube, anywhere that you can get the podcast. Give us a rating, get notifications, like it, so that we can get as many people on these as humanly possible. Help get the word out there to the rest of Wolfpack Nation. And also make sure to check out all of Pack Power's coverage throughout the rest of the basketball season. What little bit we have left, we'll see. The month of March could go on as long as NC State looks to win. But now 6 out of the last 7 and 4 straight now at this point. Losses kind of made a little bit more difficult situation for NC State. But do make sure to check out all that. Also, commitment just now tied in for NC State. They just landed. So plenty of football coverage when it comes to recruiting, but also plenty of football coverage when it comes to what's happening in spring practices. Obviously, Michael Clark's been providing that for our subscribers throughout the last several weeks. So do make sure that you check that out. 50% off when you sign up now. That gets you 6 months absolutely free at packpower247.com. So do make sure that you check that out. All right, let's jump right into this thing again. 85-84 loss for NC State. There's a lot of things that you could kind of put this game on, but I agree with David Jones here. He said, another one lost at the free throw line for NC State. Look, we could talk about, the defense for NC State late in the game. We could talk about, the fact that Stanford was just able to hit a ton of tough shots. whether it's a 40-footer from three-point range or, turnaround jumpers they were able to hit late in the shot clock. But to me, like, the free throws were just the most frustrating aspect of all this is the fact that you get 35 or 34 opportunities in this game. NC State only makes 25 of those. Now, granted, Stanford 8 of 11 from the line, so nowhere near perfect from them. But, for NC State, there was a lot of opportunities that were missed on what could have been very easy shots. The fact that Trey Holloman goes 5 of 5 from there is great, but Quadir Copeland 4 of 6, Vanilla Lubin 5 of 8, Paul McNeil 5 of 7, missed the front end of a 1-and-1 as well on one of those opportunities. Like, those are all potential opportunities. Like, when Scotty Abube is making free throws and the rest of the team is not, it's a pretty rough day in the office.
Yeah, 34 attempts. I mean, that's all you could really ask for. I think the one free throw that really stood out for me was the technical foul after Kyle Smith, the head coach, got teed up. Then Darian to the line. That's 2 you got to have.
There's only 2 free throws in the entire game, and they were handed to you.
Yeah, it handed to you. It was overall a rough game from him. 4 points, 1 of 8 shooting. I just think his confidence is shot. But, yeah, I mean, you're winning formulas if you're NC State. You need Copeland to have a good game, at least from an assist total. Finished tonight, though, with 2 and 6 turnovers. So that didn't really help you. Obviously, the rebounding is going to be a toss-up game in and game out, just what you have in the front court and what's available. Stanford got 15 offensive rebounds, only won the margin by 3, but it just felt time and time again, especially in the second half, that Stanford got second, third opportunities on the offensive side of the floor. I just thought that was very limiting. But yeah, man, 25 for 34 from the free throw line. Make one of those, and we're probably still playing overtime. So just a brutal loss. It's hard to even imagine kind of what's worse. Obviously the Miami game was 7 points, with under a minute left. But I just thought, if you're NC State, senior night, Jordan Snell gets to start. It's been a guy that's, I'm sure we'll touch on it, Cory, but it's been a guy that's been a glue guy for you the last 4 years. And it felt like, it is a very key game for NC State, just when you look at the tournament resume and just, trying to avoid pins and needles on Selection Sunday. And man, now it just kind of feels like you're behind the 8 ball. And obviously it does come down to coaching a little bit, especially in these close losses, especially in the last 4. But I just think there's a slight disconnect. I mean, Will Wade, obviously is very vocal through the media, was kind of very heavy on his players even during the 6-game win streak. And I just don't think that's just been the disconnect for this team. I know that's his coaching style. I know that's how he's done things, and he's won one of places that he's been at doing that. But I just think for this group specifically, I guess with the leaders that you have, the guy that was supposed to be your alpha, at least on the offensive side of the floor, I just think that ribbing and that tough coaching just hasn't been taken to this point. And now you're sitting at where you're at. It was tough. I mean, 2 weeks ago you were looking at a possibility for top 4 seed, not playing until Thursday next week in Charlotte, and now you're playing at high noon on Wednesday.
Yeah, not only top 4 seed in the ACC is what you're competing for, but maybe a 6 or 7 seed in the NCAA tournament. You're looking at trying to put yourself in great position to have a great matchup. Now you're just fighting to stay in. Now, again, most people before this game, I saw several had NC State at like an 8 or a 9 seed, and some had them as a 10 seed, and said, hey, look, they're still comfortably in. Like, if you look at most of the bracketologists, they don't have them as a, last 4 bye or anything along those lines. But, the doubt starts creeping in now at this point because of where you put yourself. If you were to lose in the ACC tournament, like, again, this is, a lot of this was based off of projections. A lot of places had them in based off of that, because of the fact that it was like, all right, well, if they beat Stanford and then they win the first game of the ACC tournament, they'll be at 21 wins. They're comfortably in. It's fine. Not a concern at all. But, at the same time, now at this point, you're looking at, all right, if you lose in the first round of the ACC tournament, which we've seen is highly possible, you just lost to a Stanford team that you will more than likely face when you get into that game. It's not looking great for NC State, despite all of the things that you've done to kind of stack beforehand. And I kind of want to go back to something you mentioned beforehand. And this is not to pour it on Darian Williams, but it's like this is where you're at right now. Like, we're looking at the overall stats for NC State. This is what your your starting five, your traditional starting five. Shout out to Jordan Snell, by the way, getting the start today. A great move by Will Wade. Did play 3 minutes in this game, the first 3 minutes, and finishes actually with a +1. So shout out to him on that. But when you look at the overall numbers for NC State, Paul McNeil, your traditional starter, 13 points on 3 or 4 shooting, goes 5 of 7 from the line. I talked about the frustration, missing the front end of a 1-1, missing one of the 3 free throws he had at the beginning of the game. But again, a good overall game from him. Venant Lubin, 17 points, 11 rebounds. He's been, your heart and soul in the middle, regardless of what you want to say about, his size or where he stacks up against other bigs in the ACC. He's been that guy on a consistent basis. Quadir Copeland, 16 points on 6 of 13 shooting, 4 of 6 from the free throw line. Again, frustrating that he missed anything from the free throw line. 5 rebounds, 6 turnovers in this game. That, to me, I think is the most frustrating aspect here. And then Trey Holloman, you got a really good game from him. 2 of 4 from 3-point range, 15 points, 4 of 6 overall, went 5 of 5 from the free throw line. We talk about how much frustration there is for guys missing free throws in this game, but he went a perfect 5 for 5, and got a steal. He gave you plus in every department. And then Darian Williams, despite finishing with a +6, so I'm sure that looks great. Does finish with 5 rebounds and 3 assists, just one turnover and 2 steals in this game. So those are all good numbers. But when you have 4 points on 1 of 8 shooting and 1 of 5 from 3-point range, miss a free throw when it's literally handed to you on a technical foul, I'm surprised it wasn't Trey Holloman taking those free throws. I'm surprised it wasn't Paul McNeil. So again, that's somewhat of a coaching decision, but you give it to a guy that you're like, all right, man, we need you to snap out of this. We want to give you some confidence, and he still misses the front end of the free throw, the technical free throws. Just your thoughts on his performance, but also just what we saw from the traditional starters in this one today.
Yeah. Shout out Jordan Snell for getting the start. Very, very classy move by Will Wade, a guy that obviously was already here before he was, and obviously means a lot to this program. So shout out to that. But yeah, it's again a guy that you brought in that was supposed to be the alpha of your offense, and it just really hasn't come to pass. I thought Holloman probably had one of his best games outside of maybe Maui tonight, especially coming out of the second half. He hit those back-to-back triples to start the second half to get NC State an early advantage out of the break. Thought that was great. I thought Copeland, at least down the stretch, was able to really attack the rim, either get fouled or there had a couple of and-one opportunities. But the stat that sticks out with him is the 6 turnovers. There was 1 late. NC State was down 2. Really just needed a bucket. He ends up turning it over. Then immediate foul to end his night overall. But yeah, it felt like you got at least some contributions from some guys. I thought Matt Abel is probably the highlight of all this. 13 points, 4-9 from the field. You got to find a way to bring him back, but that's a topic for another day. But thought he was great.
You're getting ahead of me, man. You're getting ahead of me.
I'm sorry. No, you're good. You're good. Yeah, but thought he was great. Obviously McNeil, you want to have those 2 free throws back, but hell, he even got the 3 to go with 0.3 seconds left. All the fans had left the arena at that point, but there was 0.3 seconds left. Obviously, not enough time to do anything with that. But yeah, and then Lubin, 17-11. You can say which one about the height. I don't know. It felt like sitting courtside. It was numerous opportunities. I think Stanford had 8 offensive rebounds in the first half, and they finished with 15. So 7 in the second half, and I think that's kind of what killed you. And I think that's the scout against NC State now. I think this team and Will Wade he had gotten the max potential of this team back in early January on the 6-game win streak, and I think obviously the schedule was a little bit backloaded with what you would see maybe in the preseason of just looking at teams that we're probably going to have a good year. And now that we're in the back half and we're playing some of these, better quality teams, Stanford, obviously UNC, Duke, got the teams that you expect to be at the top echelon of the conference. I just think the scout, I've said it before on previous podcasts, I just think the scouts, really easy for if you're playing against NC State. But Will Wade mentioned post game, a little bit about luck, some unlucky stuff. And, obviously you create your own luck, but I thought Gaylor for Stanford, however you pronounce his name, only finished with 8 points, but it was a heavy 8 points. But, Yeah, man, it's just tough. I don't know. I don't really know where you go from here for this team. I think the max potential is kind of reached out, but I will say, I mean, we said that in 2024, and in 2024 it was a 4-game losing streak. So we'll see.
Yeah, that was one of the focal points for Jordan Snell, and Will Wade talked a little bit about it after the game too. But Jordan Snell just kind of pointing out, like, I know what teams can still be capable of as long as you get a win to start things in March. Like, it can jumpstart where you are as a team if you're able to do those things. So we'll see, how NC State's able to, if they're able to hit reset. But just first of all, you mentioned Benny Geeler, guy that, finishes with 8 points, 3 of 9 overall. But like, it's, that's,
it was a heavy.
Not to say that his performance is what you wanted from Darian Williams. Like, they're not the same players at all, but mirror image of each other between the first half and the second half. Geeler, a guy that just shoots a ton of threes, obviously, 2 of 8 from 3-point range. So like, he's not always going to shoot great, but once he hits those threes, it's like it kind of, gives the team a kind of a jump start as well. But, he goes 0 of 6 in the first half, 3 of 3 in the second half before fouling out, played 27 minutes in this game and gives you 8 points. Look, if you would have gotten that from Darian Williams in this game, maybe you win the game. That would have been a vastly different look for NC State. Instead, he goes 1 of 5 from 3-point range, only misses all 3 of his shots from inside the arc. So that again, not to pile it all on one player, but like, when you go into the season and you go into a lot of these games with like, all right, that's going to be our guy, that's going to be our focal point, and has that kind of game, it's very frustrating. The only thing I'll say too, Quiddier Copeland, we pointed out a lot throughout the season how good he's been, and how, much of a catalyst for NC State he's been. He was once again a catalyst in this game for all the wrong reasons, unfortunately, on senior night. 6 of 13. Again, you score 16 points on 13 shots. That's not a bad night overall shooting, but the 6 turnovers were crippling for NC State. As a guy that, even in the 3-game losing streak prior to this, was still, not averaging a ton of us. 6.3 assists is still a really good number for him. And then, 3 turnovers per game. Tonight, only 2 assists on the game, 6 turnovers in this one. It's just a really frustrating finish to the regular season for Quiddier Copeland. The only guy out of the starters that finished with a negative in the plus-minus department. Again, a lot of that had to do with the fact that he comes out earlier in the game because of fouling out, but you really needed a bigger performance from him in that spot, especially down the stretch. And again, NC State has kind of struggled in those big moments late in games. Again, Stanford closed really strong, but like, if Quiddier Copeland's able to pass out of that, or he's able to hit a shot there, NC State, I believe at that point would have made it not only a 1-possession game, but either tied it up or made it a 1-point game, and would have at least given themselves to make a 3 at the end to be able to win it or tie it. Instead, they hit a 3 on the final possession and lose by 1. So like, all those things, a lot of different things factor into all, the loss, but that again, down the stretch, is just a frustrating way for him to go out in his final regular season game at home here at NC State, a place that, fans a couple years ago hated him, and now they still, I think NC State fans still love him. It's frustrating to see that at the very end. And as Pat said here, big moments have not been kind to Q, especially not down the stretch. But let me move off the Q bandwagon here, though, because I do want to talk about Matt Abel, the one overwhelming positive from this game that's maybe a little different from what we've seen for NC State. Obviously, I felt like he had a really good game. He's had 4 straight really good home games overall. 4 of 9, not a great clip overall, but still hits 2 3-pointers, hit all 3 of his 3-pointer or free throws, and then finishes with really tough 6 rebounds. Actually finished second on the team in rebounds. I love what you're seeing from him from a defense, from an intensity standpoint. Might not always be perfect defensively, but I just, again, the size, the shooting, what you're getting from him, I just, it still feels like a huge factor for NC State that it doesn't feel like has gone completely seen because of the way that NC State struggled outside of him, especially off the bench late in the season, but also just, in several games late in the season too.
Yeah, it's definitely not the headline because obviously people are going to focus on the scoreboard and who's starting and who's playing. The considerable minutes. Obviously, he played 30 tonight, so I would have loved to see him start. I know there's other circumstances on senior night and some guys you got to get some looks to first, but it's a sign of a good coaching or a good coach. You want to see some of your younger guys who have never played college basketball before continue to progress throughout the season. And say what you want about Will Wade, maybe some of the coaching decisions, but I think one of the highlights that is not getting talked about is Matt Abel. 13 points, had back-to-back threes in the second half. That really got NC State back into this one and made it really competitive down the stretch. Would have loved to see Musa Sanye continue to progress. Had the 11-point outing against Syracuse earlier in the year, and you would have thought he would have been another candidate to kind of get some things going. At least for NC State in the front court, but only played 3 minutes tonight. Cory, you said it in previous talks, but he just looks rushed. Gets fluttered, under the basket, not squeezing the ball with two hands down low. So he only played 3 minutes tonight. But yeah, I think, Matt Abel's like I said earlier in the podcast, I think Matt Abel, I know this year's not finished and there's still, plenty of basketball hopefully to be played for NC State. But for looking at NC State, next year, I think outside of maybe, a guy like Michael Wilkins, who we've learned lost, 30 pounds during the redshirt season. I think outside of him, you really got to figure out how to bring back Matt Abel. I think he's going to be a guy for NC State that will be, a mainstay in your starting five next season. It's a guy kind of you can build around because 7 seniors. I mean, you got to look at the roster and what you have left. It's a lot. I mean, I know obviously Breed has another year of eligibility. I'm not sure he comes back to NC State. Maybe he goes, somewhere where you can see some more playing time. But 7 guys is going to be a lot to replace. And I think in terms of retention, you brought back Paul McNeil this year. That might not be the case. That might be the case this year. We'll see what he likes to do. But I just think, in terms of Matt Abel and McNeil, they obviously play a similar role in this offense. I think the biggest, difference between them, at least in my eyes, is obviously McNeil's, more of a deep threat, pure shooter. I think the biggest thing for Breed that kind of makes him stand out is he's able to create his own shot. I know, what Will Wade's had his sets for McNeil. Matt Abel. Yeah, Matt Abel's actually, able to create his own shot. I felt at times McNeil this year, it's required a set. It's required a set play to get McNeil an open look. And, I would love to see the split on his 2s and 3s taken, but obviously the 3s are going to be much higher than the 2s. But I just like the duality of Matt Abel's game. And I think that's going to create another dimension for NC State moving forward. I mean, obviously maybe you would love to have McNeil back, but I think Matt Abel's got to be the first priority, especially since, late in the season, he's continued to get better and better. And obviously Holloman had a great game today, especially from the free throw line, but that's been a candidate I think that's, you would maybe want to see replace, after the Duke game, especially. I think Holloman only played 3 or 4 minutes. I don't think he played after the under 16 against Duke. And obviously the game was out of hand, early and often. So that's probably why Matt Abel got a lot of run, but and it might be a guy you really have to go to in the starting lineup. I don't see why you wouldn't, especially in the ACC tournament. You got to win it. Would love to put the best guys out there, but obviously, Cory went for 33, but I will say the one bright side for Trey Holloman is there was a lull in the second half when NC State was able to get back into it, take the lead. I think Cory sat on 26 for at least a solid 5 or 6 minutes there to kind of help State get back in it. But man, Cory's an NBA talent, and he showed that.
Yeah, I mean, he was elite tonight. And again, it doesn't – part of it, too, is the fact that doesn't hurt you as much if, Rahosi doesn't have 14 points. Jalen Thompson with a career high, I believe, 15 points. I believe his career high prior to this was 8 points in his career. So, we don't notice these things, but, Jalen Thompson at the wing position, a place where NC State has really struggled to guard this season. 1 of 6 from – 3-point range, but 5 of 6 from inside the arc in this game. They figured that out. They got to him a couple times. He drew a foul and hit both free throws, and that he's not been an offensive piece. I would if we're looking to kind of compare it to somebody, it would be like Musa Sanye, suddenly having 15 points in a game, and it's that changes the entire outlook for you. So yeah, Cory having a huge game. Again, he's done that a lot. It's just you can't allow the other players around him. Dent Smith in this game hit all four of his free throws down the stretch. And then Jalen Thompson, like I said, having a career game for him tonight, 6 points as well, or 6 rebounds as well. So like all those different things factor in. And when you're not able to take all the other players out of the game and you allow a guy like a Cory to go 5 of 8 from 3-point range, 33 points overall, that would be, that again, just it leads to really frustrating nights for NC State. And there's yet another one for them tonight in this one. Last thing before we wrap this thing up, because I did want to keep this kind of short. You got dinner to get to, and I know a lot of people don't want to sit around and sulk about the Stanford loss. Let's look at the resume, like to give people an idea, by the way. Right now, NC State's sitting at the number 7 seed. I believe there's a chance they could slip to number 8 and potentially have to play in the 8-9 game, but it looks like more than likely going to be sitting at the 7 seed going into the ACC tournament. Frustrating compared to what you could have been. All you needed was a couple of the gimme wins. You win against Georgia Tech. You win against, not to say Miami was a gimme game, but like if you win against Miami at home when you had a late lead, you do the things that Stanford did tonight and you finish games. And then you say you win on the road at Notre Dame. Those are 3 more wins. NC State's sitting at 13 and 13 and 5 in ACC play instead of 10 and 8 right now. But you are the 7th seed going into things. Right now, I think most people still have NC State as probably around a 10 seed, but could be, looking at Dayton if you're losing to Stanford in the ACC tournament opener. Just your thoughts on where NC State stands right now and what needs to happen once they get to Charlotte.
Yeah, the margin gets thinner because even if you beat Stanford or Boston College in the first round, you would play UVA. That's just not NC State's matchup. It's clearly we've shown that twice already. The home away court does not matter. They just have too much size, I think, for us. So that's a game you more than likely drop just due to the matchups and just some teams are not your team, and UVA is not.
But again, that's a Q1. That would potentially be a Q1 loss. Like if you're able to balance in the ACC tournament, if you're able to balance 1-1 in quad 1 games in the ACC tournament, which Stanford would be, and so would UVA, like that's not a terrible look. You just got to win that first game.
Yeah, I really think you have to win the first game. It's going to be imperative. If not, like you said, I think you're sitting either last 4 byes or you're looking at Dayton, which for this team back in January, I don't think anybody would have said Dayton or last 4 byes, but that's just kind of where we are. And it really shows that basketball is a game of possessions. I mean, obviously you look at the Miami game. Obviously you look at the Georgia Tech game. You're up 9. And then even go back further. You look at the Kansas game. You're in overtime. If Quadir Copeland's layup at the end falls, then, we're not talking about any of this. But now we are. And it does kind of sting when, all these kind of promises were made in the preseason, top half of the ACC. I don't know. I don't think I would consider 7 as a top half of the ACC, unfortunately. And then you make, signs of the Red Reckoning and you do all this branding and stuff for it. And now it doesn't feel like a slap in the face. It just feels like, it's a lot of, unkept promises. So I think all that does go away, though, if you do make the tournament. But it really felt like tonight was a must win. But, man, if you lose that Wednesday afternoon game to either Stanford or Boston College, you're on pins and needles Sunday, and you might get the benefit of the doubt. The metrics look okay. I think from a scheduling standpoint, I think that's going to be what NC State will fall on. I really did like the scheduling this year, especially in the year 1 of the new program. You didn't play a lot of heavy hitters, but you played a lot of teams non-P4 that you expected to be at the top of the conference. BCU, for example, Liberty, for example. Those wins, go farther than I think people, realize, maybe just from an eye test perspective. So I think, when Will Wade kind of spoke on it in the press conference after this game, that, we banked some wins early on in the non-conference, banked some wins, early in the year. I think that's kind of what he's referring to, because some of those games are high caliber games or high quality games in terms of the resume, even if they're not, on paper matchup wise, big games from an NC State perspective. But we'll see. I hate that we even have to have the conversation, Cory, about being on the bubble or being, kind of towing the line here, but it really feels like you're fine if you win Wednesday afternoon. I think you'll be maybe a 10 seed. I think that would benefit NC State if they were a 10 seed. Avoid the 8-9 matchup, and then avoid the potential 1 if you do win that first round game of the NCAA tournament. But you don't want to have to snake in at the 10 seed. But that's what NC State was 2 years ago, and we saw what happened. But we'll see. But I mean, put it in your own fate. I think if you're Will Wade NC State, put it in your own hands, put it in your own fate. Don't let the committee decide things for you. Finish it to the end. You probably get a Stanford rematch. You kind of look at the film, see what went wrong, and it's if you want to act like you belong in the NCAA tournament, that's a game you just have to win. Point simple. It's still another cross-country game for Stanford. They're still going to Charlotte. I thought that was going to be kind of the key difference in this one, because
I wonder if Stanford's just staying in town.
They probably should. They honestly probably should. But I mean, that's a tough task for them. I know when State went and played Stanford Cal last year, it was just absolutely brutal. I think that time change has affected a lot of teams in the ACC. Playing on the West Coast. I think even Carolina dropped both those games in California this year, so I think that could play a factor. But oh man, it's going to be, again, probably in Charlotte, another home type-ish atmosphere. You're definitely going to have more fans than Stanford at that game. So you got to find a way to guard Cory, even if it's face guarding him. I know he went 2-3 in a 2-3 zone to start the game, but I'd be a fan of almost face guarding him. Let Holloman or whoever you have, maybe Arsenault for more size. Just face guard him and play maybe a zone for the other 4 guys. I don't know. You got to find an answer, because if that guy goes for 33 again, Stanford doesn't need much more of a sporting cast. They can have a guy like Gaylor have 8 points. You can have a guy like they're starting five man came in 0 points tonight. Obviously it didn't matter. I mean, with Cory's 33, so
it balances out, right?
Yeah. So it all balances out, but that's obviously got to be priority one. It's finding more boards on the defensive end and guarding that guy, because if he goes for 33 again, you're on pins and needles at the Cory Sports Bar, if that's where NC State decides to host a selection show. They might not even have one if they're on the bubble. If they're this far on the bubble, I mean, I would not be hosting a party, because you'll
probably be sitting in the practice facility watching on a big screen TV. Yeah. Like, all right, if we get in, we'll celebrate. But yeah, I mean, you mentioned Cory and they're starting 5. I mean, between the two of them, they average 16.5 points. So that's not a bad night if you can have that. But yeah, last thing I wanted to point out here too. First of all, NC State, if they get the 7 seed, would start at noon on Wednesday in Charlotte, and then if they were to drop down to the 8 seed, then obviously they would start. Well, actually, I'm not seeing where is the 8 seed. Oh yeah, they would actually start at the 7 o'clock start time against the number 9 seed on Wednesday. So either way, starting on Wednesday, but we'll see ultimately what seed they finish with. David Johnson, I did want to address this. He said, you guys are already making excuses for losses in the ACC tournament. No, nobody's making excuses. Like, the ultimate goal when you go to the ACC tournament is to try to win the whole thing. All we're saying is, if you want to get into the NCAA tournament, you need to at least win 1. And then you're playing with house money from there. Like, if you could beat Stanford in the opener, then you feel pretty good. Now, if you beat Boston College, that actually hurts your metrics. And it might, sure, getting to 20 wins looks great, but it won't look as good. But that could very well be a game between NC State and Stanford if that ends up being the case on Wednesday. Both teams are competing to potentially get into the NCAA tournament at that point. Like, if you lose to Stanford, they may take your spot. Like, that's where this thing is at. And that's not something that I really thought that would be the situation here, but we'll see where things stand, what other teams do on this final Saturday, and then what happens, as far as bid stealers and things along those lines throughout the tournaments too.
Yeah, you need the bubble teams, the current bubble teams that are with you to lose and that have non-chaos in conference tournaments. But
yeah,
it's March. You can't say March and chaos not happening together, because it's happened every year. But you're going to need you guys to show up, plain and simple. You can't have your best player, at least on paper, heading into the year, your ACC preseason player of the year, finished 1 for 8. And I think it's tough. I feel like his confidence is a little bit shot, but we'll see. It's a situation now where NC State's just looking to go at least bare minimum 1-0. Your season's reset. You throw out the entire regular season. Everybody's 0-0 to start March now, and you just go from there. I mean, it's felt like NC State for years has always kind of lived on the bubble. I think I like the guy's tweet going back to like 2005. NC State's always been between the 8 or 10 seed line. So it's nothing new for NC State. I'm not saying this is like uncharted territory. We've been here before, Cory, and we've been.
It just felt different. Like 3 weeks ago, it felt different, man. Like
that's you don't have to play on Tuesday. Jordan Snell did say that at the postgame. He's like, "Hey, I'm thankful we have to play on Wednesday instead of Tuesday," which definitely helps you out. But yeah, you definitely have to root for Stanford on Tuesday to beat Boston College, because that'd be the most ideal scenario. So you can go and hopefully get some revenge on Stanford. But yeah, you need you guys to show up.
Get another quality win. Yeah.
You need you guys to show up, and it's been inconsistent. It's been non-existent, especially down the stretch. I think some of the wins that NC State has or got early in the regular ACC season. I highlight Florida State. Obviously, it's probably our best game of the year. Florida State looks good now, so it's like that's the type of team that's gotten better throughout the season. And I just feel like teams that NC State has played has figured out the scout, and it's just made NC State kind of force some shots. The switching 1 through 5 is not really working either. So yeah, it's just time to hit reset. I think.
Kind of to your point, too, I mean, there's just a lot of teams in the ACC that have gotten hot at the end of the season. NC State's the complete opposite. I mean, you've got Florida State that's playing much better. You've obviously got Virginia that's been playing really well throughout the season, but, it's just looked really good. Outside of the Duke game, has looked really good down the stretch. Obviously, Miami playing significantly better. You had a chance to win that. You didn't. Maybe things look completely different there. But, there's a couple other teams, too, that Stanford tonight. Stanford, this is their 4th straight win. Like, this is a team that was nowhere near the bubble 2 weeks ago and has suddenly put themselves in the discussion because of multiple quality wins to potentially give the ACC more teams. Now for NC State, it's just about assuring yourself that spot and not letting another team steal it away from you, and then not leaving any kind of question marks, because that's kind of where you're at right now.
It goes to show, obviously you don't want to leave it in the committee's hands, but I really think if, NC State last year finished 19-12, 10-8 in the ACC, that's not a tournament team. I think that as a whole, I think NC State, hopefully, especially if you do make the tournament, will benefit from having a better conference as a whole, having more quad 1 opportunities, having more, at least quad 2 opportunities to kind of boost your resume. But I think even last year, if with the same record, maybe the same schedule, same results, I don't think you're nearly as high in KenPom, nearly as high in the net, in some of those metrics. And it kind of goes to show, obviously you've lost 6 or 7, and the committee will definitely look at that Carolina win a little bit different due to the player availability. But man, if you had lost to Carolina too, I think you would have been in a world of trouble. And I think, obviously don't want to, root for injuries, but I think, especially when it comes to player availability, NC State did take advantage of that. And it could be the deciding factor, especially if you lose that first game in the ACC tournament. I mean, that you might have to look at that Carolina win. If NC State makes the tournament, you might have to look at that Carolina win as maybe the needle point to decide everything.
Yes, sir. All right, well, I think that'll just about wrap things up. Again, an 85-84 loss for NC State. Came down to the final possession. NC State not able to finish it there for them. Once again, finishes now 6 of the last 7 losses, 4 straight losses to close the season out on senior night. We'll have much more from this game. We'll also have plenty of content leading up to the ACC tournament once we officially know where NC State will be landing. But thank you again to everybody for listening. I appreciate Charlie for jumping on. We will talk to you guys again soon.